Hello and welcome to the Creative Commons Open Source Office Hours. We are hanging out on CodeBuddies.org. Today we're going to continue working on creating an API endpoint with WordPress. And it's going to return some pre-rendered HTML, server-side HTML, which is basically what WordPress is designed for initially, and other platforms like frameworks like Django and Laravel and whatnot. So we're back to a familiar paradigm, full circle with the SPA movement, realizing the value of server rendered HTML. And the idea here is that these HTML fragments can be used in other client applications or downstream software build static generation. Basically, we have a Django application that serves the Creative Commons licenses, and we want to have a consistent look and feel for those licenses. Namely, we want to display a common navigation menu across the top and some other elements, such as a donation call to action, so that when a user is moving between the Creative Commons.org WordPress website to the licenses static build, it's seamless, and they don't realize they've actually gone to another service via a reverse proxy. So these HTML fragments are a way we'll have consistent menu structure even if the WordPress menu changes. And likewise, we'll also serve, we already do serve the CSS and other static assets through the same API. Where we left off last time is basically familiarization. I needed to enable this permalink structure in order to get clean URLs, which is something I've just forgotten about. That's what you need to do in WordPress in general to avoid having to put in a prefix. If I disable this permalinks, I'll need to just put this prefix here. No, I'm not sure exactly. Slash path. The path is WP-JSON hello world trailing slash. I'm still not even exactly sure how to access the endpoint over here. So I'll enable the permalinks, just any of the permalinks, really, as long as your htaccess rule is in place. And I'll take out this path, and we get our return data as expected as hello world. So that was just enough for me to get an understanding of how to define a function that returns some data and map that function to an API endpoint with a namespace and a path. So there's the namespace and the path. And this is the default API endpoint for WP for WordPress. And it'll serve up some information. I'm not really read through this, but this might be documentation of all the API endpoints. I don't know. So we'll leave all this as is. I'm not going to change anything to the default. Today I'm going to continue though. I want to take the next step. First, I want to resolve this issue where I was just confused about how to get the API to work. And I think I'll read our documentation and the WordPress documentation just a little bit closer to make sure that it's not already documented that you need to enable permalinks. And I'll add a note to our README to make sure that try to spare somebody else the confusion. So here's the adding custom. Let me see if there's like a note or a warning. I'm just gonna update this. Actually, you might be right. Well, apparently I am, because I opened it directly from the documentation page. Hopefully. It's not some kind of deprecated repository, WPAPI. API teams as an organization. Looks good. Alright, maybe there was some other mention of permalinks. I just want to put that in context. Let's go ahead and just enable that. Mention that also our project where I do have merge access. Closes 14. Branch. Here's branches. Huh. Right here. Dun, 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 dun. Very cool. Next, so that'll be closed. It's weird. Oh, there it goes. All right. Yeah, so that'll close that issue. And I need to assign myself to pull request just by convention. And we're working on this in the active sprint. Code review. Active sprint. Code review. All right, I'm gonna close that tab out. Cool. Now this is just a test. Emergency broadcast system. If this works, I'm going to split this into several tasks, and we can prioritize those amongst the other work. But basically, I want to return, instead of this hello world string, I want to return some rendered HTML. And since we're looking primarily at these navigation menus, I'm going to just try that. Return the WP nav menu. Desired menu accepts menu ID, select name or object. Okay, so let's see. Here's our hello world that's working. How do I get the menu ID? Menu ID select. Let's see. Appearance menus. There we go. Alright, so the main. name or object. I can probably look up here, look to our other code. Essentially, we've got some functions. The paradigm is, with SPA movement, has been to use the server only for like raw data, JSON structured data, to kind of dispense with returning rendered HTML to the extent it's possible. Now we're back around full circle, realizing the value of pre-rendering things on the server for SEO and accessibility, for example. A couple of examples. And I'll add to that these server frameworks like Django, Ruby on Rails, Laravel are very mature and robust and have a lot of benefit, like their templating languages and things like that in the server context. So I really think we threw a baby out with the bathwater by switching entirely to JavaScript clients for managing the front end. And I think the JavaScript on the front end should be minimal, only for dynamic things, and essentially responsible for just replacing DOM elements with pre-rendered fragments, HTML fragments sent from the server by a server sent event or AJAX or other mechanisms, polling if you want. So that's my opinion. That's the direction we're going to take this project and perhaps other projects. And there's, frameworks like HTMX, libraries, like you could call them, I mentioned here, that are kind of on the same wavelength. And there's a bunch of examples from different framework ecosystems, like Phoenix and Livewire from Laravel. Rails, there's one. There's Django has a couple of examples where we're back to the basics, like JavaScript on the front end, just swapping out DOM elements via AJAX, API calls. So this is really just revitalization of, remote procedure calls or something like that. So you just give it an endpoint, it'll send a request. So this is we're sticking with REST API semantics to an endpoint, and it takes the response, and rather than being JSON, it's just some HTML, and it'll render it to the outer or inner HTML wherever you put it. Post request via AJAX. So it's a remote procedure call that returns hypertext. Very interesting project. So let's go ahead and see if I can render this the HTML from the WordPress menu. I just need the menu name. So if I go to functions, this is where in the Creative Commons base theme and WordPress theme, Creative Commons, this filters, I believe, is where our API is. A bunch of defined. Here we go. Okay. Add menu. Global menu. Global menu equals WP. Add menu object. New locations. Global menu. Okay, so we have a dictionary, or whatever you would call that. Let's try it. So we're going to get the global menu. Oops, I need to. While we're at it though, let me just double check. Now that I've gotten the endpoints to work as expected, we can actually. All right, well that's working perfectly. I don't have the theme enabled. Activate that. There we go. Okay, so there's our menu. Looking good. So we're gonna follow suit here. here. We're going to grab this global menu. I'm going to go ahead and define this endpoint. In the same class. And this can just be returned. And the function to call the pnav menu, I believe it's just gonna display a navigation menu, or you just want the HTML. This is an example of let me just move this over to our hello world. Alright. So that's working. That's essentially what we're after. This HTML fragment, but without the warning. So, I'll try this in Insomnia. It should just work without authentication. Yeah. It's also kind of weird. Formatting. Oh dang, didn't quite. Now this is fine. Yeah, maybe this is not the first class entity. Well, it's not a first class kind of a concept returning rendered HTML from the API. So maybe bending convention a little bit. just with Django, for example, and Rails, I'm sure, you just kind of have a template, and you prepare some context data, and you pass the template name and the context data to a render function, and it renders it, returns the output. Doesn't matter if it's a navigation menu or anything like that. WordPress is not quite fully fledged development framework in that sense, to my awareness, to my knowledge. So I don't know what this means. I'm not sure that this is on the right path. I'm just curious. This seems pretty kludgy. Did work though. So essentially I need like a decorator function or a wrapper function. Functions first class. However, I don't think this is an overall good approach because we might need to debug our endpoints. It won't work anyway. Dang it. Alright, at least I'm not sure how to callback is the name of a function. Let's see, register restaurant. Alright, I'm just going to make note of this. Okay, this has been a Code Buddies hangout, codebuddies.org, where we've been working on open source for the Creative Commons. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.